the Medieval Academy of America is the largest organization in the United States and actually in the world promoting excellence in the field of medieval studies. We have over 3,500 members worldwide, 80 something countries last time I checked, every state except North Dakota, but we're working on it. And we publish the journal of record in medieval studies called Speculum, which is mirror in Latin. We award $100,000 every year in prizes, grants, fellowships, and we support teaching, research, and publication in every possible field of medieval studies. Membership is open to anyone at all who is interested in the Middle Ages. We have a growing cohort of K through 12 educators. And last time I checked, I believe we had 50. The cost to join is $60 per year. We do offer introductory one-year memberships to K through 12 educators. So if you are interested in taking advantage of that, I'll just email me. I'll put my email address in the chat window, and Kisha or Mike or Hannah, if you want to put that in the streets, that we're offering a one-year introductory membership to K through 12 educators, that would be great. And we hope that after a year of membership, you will discover that all that we have to offer. We are the co-sponsors of this course, now in its third iteration, I think. And part of our goal in producing this course and supporting this course is to help to broaden the understanding and what we mean when we talk about the Middle Ages, that the Middle Ages isn't just in that upper left corner of Europe. The Middle Ages is Europe, Asia, Africa. The Middle Ages is everywhere. And that's really the goal of this course, is to help broaden everyone's perspective and to see what a vibrant and intellectual and beautiful and musical and historical and political and artistic and literate place Africa was during the period that we call the Middle Ages. And the only last thing that I want to say is I'm really glad you're here, and I hope that if you do join the Academy, that you'll get involved with our K through 12 committee. We have 2 sessions at every conference, our annual conference, devoted to K through 12 issues, curricula, and professional development. So I hope I will see you at our annual meeting. Next year, we'll be at the University of Virginia. So I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll turn it over to our instructors, Dr. Tracy, Hannah.
Hi, everyone. It is good to see faces after I've been reading your words for the last week. This is the first time we've had a face-to-face session during the class. So this is the first time I get to see the people that I'm actually talking to. So this is really fantastic. First of all, it's been a great first week. I've been really excited about everything that I've read so far and all of your ideas. And I know that that's going to continue as we move forward in the next few weeks. I don't want to take up too much today because I'd rather spend most of the time in discussion or questions that you might have. But I do want to just give you a little bit of my history with the course and then where we're headed with the course, actually. And so I was a member of the K-12 committee that Lisa talked about, chaired it for a year, or co-chaired it for a year. And it I've been well, both my parents were K-12 instructors, so I've been involved with K-12 instruction my entire life, and I remain very passionate about it. And so given that opportunity to share my field with K-12 and make sure that we're using that cooperation and creating that cooperation in the K-16 environment is very important to me. So when that opportunity came up, I definitely jumped on that. And then this opportunity to work with the NHC came up a little bit later. and was a perfect opportunity to be able to develop resources and develop that cooperation. I think it's vital that we have a K-16 cooperation. I think we've been way too separated, and we need to spend a lot more time together and a lot more time thinking about curriculum across all of our students, and how we might be able to do that. And obviously medieval studies is my first love, so I'm very excited about this. I also became really interested in medieval Africa over the last few years. I attended they let me come into a K-12 seminar that was held at Howard University a few years ago. I don't even know, time means nothing at this point with the pandemic, so I'm not even sure what year it was when I attended that. I think it was 2018 at this point. And I also attended a virtual one last year. Just really fell in love with everything, and fell in love with the idea of creating of working more towards the global Middle Ages, as Lisa was talking about. I've taught an undergraduate class on medieval Africa last year in the fall. Not the most ideal time to teach any class, really, but it was my first opportunity to teach it to undergraduates, and they ate it up. They loved it. It was really a topic that seemed to be something that they didn't know they wanted, but they wanted it once they realized that it was out there. So they really showed me that this is a topic that is of interest to students of all levels. It's also a topic that can really be of interest to students of color, to students of different marginalized communities, to show that, you know, there's a lot more going on than the white history or very limited history. I mean, not, again, don't get me wrong, I love European European history because I spent my entire graduate career studying it, but to put that into context with the rest of the world is very exciting. In fact, I've been spreading over to Latin America recently, and I know Hannah's very excited about that. That's her field. I've been getting into the pre-conquest Aztecs and that all of that time period as well. So there's just so much to learn, so much to go out and do. So it's good to see everybody who's really excited about this. Once we started to develop this course, we tried to figure out a way to organize it. I'm sure you've picked up on the organization right now, which is the myths. Each week, we are going to approach a myth about Africa, about medieval Africa in particular. We've already encountered a couple of those, but to give you a preview, after we moved from Africa was isolated in the coming week, we're going to move on then to the myth that medieval Africa was uncultured, that it had no art or anything along those lines. And we'll talk about what culture actually means. And Hannah has put together an exercise on measuring culture, which is very an interesting concept. How do you even measure that there's enough culture to be uncultured in some place? We'll move on from that to medieval Africa was illiterate. This is particularly of interest to me. My main study is literature and language, and this one will tackle that idea that there is that storytelling is not a literate activity in some fashion or anything along those lines. So we'll be dealing with that myth then. We will then move into the last myth, the next to last myth, which is that Africa is insignificant. And we'll talk a lot about the significance of studying medieval Africa and how we can communicate that to students. The final one, where you will work on your final project, is the myth that I can't teach medieval Africa. This is kind of a prevalent one that some people push back on it, that they don't have enough experience or enough background or enough resources. But we can. As I said, I taught an entire semester of medieval Africa undergraduate course. The resources are there, and I wish there were a ton more resources, and I'm hoping courses like this one will help us get those resources. But certainly there's tons and plenty out there to teach as far as medieval Africa is concerned. So it's kind of a preview of what we're going to be doing as we move forward into this course. I will say that this is a course that only touches on aspects of medieval Africa. We certainly can't get to everything about this part of the world and this part of the time period, but we try to give you an overview and give you things to work with and things to build on. There's plenty of rabbit holes to go down as we go through these, and you'll find yourself wanting to get to those. And at least I hope you do, because part of this is just opening those up instead of kind of exploring them fully, but at least we'll hopefully give you a start on a lot of these, and hopefully you will come away with massive amounts of resources, which our participants have in the past as well. The real key to this course is to participate as much as you can in the discussions and the activities. It really is to, you know, have read what others have written, ideas that people come up with. Hannah and I try to, we can't get to every single thing that everybody says, but we try to offer our own ideas or ask further questions or try to connect you with resources whenever we see that you need them. So that's the real key. Is it is an asynchronous course, as you've learned in the last week. So it really is about getting as involved as you can online. You are more than welcome to message me at any time, and I will do my best to get back to you. I'm past my semester now, so I'm a lot more. I will get back to you a lot faster than I would have a few weeks ago. We know that for a lot of you who are in K-12, this is a tough time of the semester or the tough time of the year. So, you know, if you need to adjust some of things or move some deadlines a few days, we completely understand. So just be in contact with us, and I'm sure we can take care of anything that crops up. So I'm going to turn it over to Hannah now for I think she's going to focus mainly on the tech side, but I'm sure she has other things to add as well, because she's amazing. If you haven't talked to Hannah yet, you will definitely get a chance to, and she is awesome. So do please take the opportunity to chat with her whenever you can. And then we can open it up to questions and discussion after that. Hannah?
Thank you. I will try to live up to those compliments.
Oh, you will. Don't worry about it.
I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Hannah Abrahamson. I'm a PhD candidate at Emory University. My focus is Latin American history. I like to play medievalist sometimes. I work on the 16th century, but I like to sneak into medievalist meetings when I can. There's a big pull to those meetings, so I've enjoyed those. And I'm not too many centuries away from the medieval period. I've also studied early modern Africa with Dr. Kristen Mann right before she retired from Emory University, and that has helped me in my contextualization of the course. And I'm thrilled to be a part of Medieval Africa and Africans. I loved helping to design the course, and I've been happy to serve as the assistant instructor in the spring and summer. So a few notes about technology. We use several ed tech tools, so educational technology tools in this course. It can be annoying having to register for some of these. However, the idea is that we want you to familiarize yourself with different types of technology that you may or may not want to end up using in the classroom. The one that we've used so far this week is Padlet. So you're probably familiar with that. If you do not create a login, the Padlet will, when you add a response, will automatically come up as anonymous. However, if you create a login and log in, it will come up with your name. So if you decide not to create a login, which is perfectly fine, please include your name at the bottom of the text, just so we know who is saying what, and that way we can keep track of participation. The course itself is asynchronous. For the most part, it's pretty easy to follow. Depending on the browser you're using, it can be a little tricky. The links are set so that when you click a link, it's supposed to open in a new tab, so that way you're not having to toggle back and forth all of the time. However, I've noticed that on Safari, that doesn't always happen as an internet browser. So if that's occurring, you can always try switching internet browsers, or what I do is just click and tab it open to a new browser. So that's another way you can sort of auto-select that. And that's an easier way to go back and forth, because we do have a lot of links and resources. So we'll be using several different ed tech tools. We have instructions for how to use those. However, if those instructions aren't making sense, or if you have further questions, please feel free to email me or Mike or Kisha, and we'll help you figure that out. For the most part, we have dealt with all of the tech issues over the last few months, so we will be familiar with an issue if it arises. And most of the ed tech tools are interesting or useful in some ways. My personal favorite is Padlet. I like it a lot. I like that we can have discussions or create a timeline as we did over this past week, or that can be used for mapping. I find it even easier than Google Maps sometimes. So just a comment, but we'll be using other ed tech tools in the upcoming weeks. Another platform that I would like to highlight is the Humanities in Class Digital Library. That is run and maintained by the National Humanities Center, and that is where all participants will be uploading their final project. And their final project is a lesson plan or educational resource, or in a few cases, perhaps the equivalent if someone is not necessarily teaching. And the idea is that each participant will share what they've learned and will create something that they could use in their classroom. So you will adjust that to the types of classes that you're teaching. Make something that will be useful for you. We have a set of guidelines that you can follow, but that's just to give you an idea of how to adjust the project as you're going along. I recommend that everyone take the chance to log into the Humanities in Class Digital Library and look at the projects that have been submitted by previous participants. They've done some really wonderful work. And it's also a set of openly available lesson plans. So these are really great resources. I've read through some of them and they're amazing. So you can use some of those in the classroom as well. And you can also look at those as examples as you're developing your own final project. And then one final comment, often I will get emails or I'll see discussion forums with lots of really great resources and links. If you're going to share links, you're welcome to share them in the forums, but I also encourage you to share them in the open discussion Padlet. It's located at the end of every module and it's the same Padlet. So I put the same one in each module so that way there's a long ongoing cumulative discussion full of resources. And at the end, Kisha puts those into a PDF and sends them to all of the participants. So those are additional resources that are generated by the participants and then Kisha and myself throughout the course of the semester. It's great. So anything related to teaching, medieval Africa, African history, the Middle Ages, anything that you think might be useful for yourself or fellow educators, please feel free to share it there. And I believe that's all I have for now. We can open the floor to questions and comments if you'd like.
Just so one more addition to that, Hannah said that I will give you a PDF of that Padlet, so you don't need to worry about downloading all of the resources that are on the Padlet. However, the resources and links that are in the course, you do want to collect those as you go, because about, what is it, Mike, Hannah, a couple of weeks after the course, you may not have access to that anymore. So you need to get those whenever you want them. So if they're in the course, download, you can be sure you get them. If they're in the Padlet, don't worry, I will send you a copy of the Padlet whenever it's over.
And the bibliography.
Can I jump in, Hannah?
Sure.
Can I just say one thing? I just noticed something that I didn't realize before when I was speaking, which is that Katherine Jansen, who is the editor of the Journal of the Medieval Academy of America, Speculum, is with us this evening and is actually enrolled in the course. So I just wanted to point her out to you. She's at Catholic, not in her background. Her background is somewhere else lovely. But she's at Catholic University. You're lucky to have her here with you in the room.
The bibliographical resources page, which is in that introductory module, that has actually been added to the Humanities in Class Digital Library as well. So you can access it through there after the course is done. The Humanities in Class Digital Library is not a part of the course. It's separate, although we will be using coursework and adding that to the library, but that remains separate from the course. So that you can access that at any time.
Awesome. So yeah, just any questions that you might have, anything that any observations you want to make about the course so far, what you're hoping that you get out of it. We're open for anything right now.
I just want to say, only after 1 week, or really sort of a couple of days, I really want to say how beautifully designed the class is. I've told some of you that I'm so impressed with how beautifully designed the course is. So I'm happy to be with all of you and to learn from all of you as well.
Thanks so much, Catherine. It makes our hearts good whenever we hear that. So just keep telling us that all the way through. It's good.
Course designer heart happy. Thank you.
Exactly.
I'd love to hear from people about why you're taking the class. You may have discussed this already in another context, but since I'm not enrolled in the class, I'd really love to hear from some of you if you're willing to say why you're here and what you hope to get out of the class.
Age before beauty. I'll speak. My name's Cecile Tuga, and I studied philosophy a lot, and I always wondered what happened in other parts besides Europe or even Asia, you know, and what happened from Africa. And sometimes they'd mention somebody like Al-Farabi, but there was no connection, there was no link to it. So when I first saw this, one of the teachers at the school where I teach had taken this course. And before I knew it, I was in it. So I'm anticipating it very much.
Thank you.
I'll jump in, and I'm Deb Manning, and I'm a middle school teacher. So there's a little bit of an intimidation factor going on here with so many PhDs and you know, wildly, you know,
You know how many
level teachers.
You know how many PhDs could not handle middle school? Don't even.
I'm teaching a high school kid now, and I am so in awe of the work that K-12 educators do.
It's been a year.
Many middle
But I know for me, I'm in this because I'm new to teaching kind of medieval studies to my seventh graders. It's something that the curriculum's kind of moved around in Massachusetts a little bit, and so it's new to me. And this is really kind of, so all of it's new, but I'm recognizing in this first year in just how European centric it is, and I'm also recognizing just how, you know, how low my knowledge is of, you know, of Africa and kind of the history of Africa. And it seems like all that, in terms of when we speak about Africa in the class, it's usually in context with how are they relating to Europe. And there's always, Africa never stands on its own. And so for me, I know also, you know, kind of been around the block while going to school as long ago as I did, didn't get a great background on the studies of Africa. And I'm feeling like I'm kind of starting at square one. And so I really want to learn. I was excited when I saw this course, and it was another one of those where I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Just for my own knowledge, but also to be able to really bring the community that I teach in this information and make it. I love that global medieval studies. Like, I think that that's what it should be. And right now my course and the way that even Massachusetts Frameworks is put together, it's not. It's very European centric, and it's something that needs to change, but it needs to start with me. So,
Well,
Deb, where in Massachusetts do you teach?
I'm in Medfield, which is kind of southwest of.
No, I'm in Boston. That's why I was asking.
Okay, yeah.
So Deb, do not feel badly about the idea that, you know, that the Middle Ages for you or for anyone is European centric. I mean, I have a PhD in medieval studies, and I don't think the word Africa was mentioned the entire time that I took my PhD in medieval studies. Asia was barely mentioned the entire time that I was taking it. So this is a very new and very necessary approach that medieval studies is starting to take. And there are very few people that actually have graduate backgrounds in medieval Africa at this point. So I mean, they exist, don't get me wrong, they exist, and the experts are definitely out there. But as far as mainstream medieval studies, if there's mainstream medieval studies is concerned, this is new. This approach is very new. So it doesn't just start with you, but we are very excited that you're on board with it. We're kind of all in this together as far as figuring out how to make sure that global medieval studies, and in this case medieval Africa, is part of the curriculum. So also, I just want to say, if any of you are creating medieval in general, are creating new curriculum related to that, we can certainly help with broader medieval resources as well, and getting you connected with any experts that you need. There are plenty of medievalists that love to come into K-12 classrooms. So me being one of them. So we can find you somebody who does what you want to do, and can either have them Zoom in or find somebody in your area as we get more back face to face.
Yeah, the Medieval Academy can definitely help with that, for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I
And-
believe in order of hand raising, we have Miriam and then Kara and then William.
How do you
Perfect,
raise
Hannah.
your
Thank
hand?
you for keeping track.
Trying to see how to raise my hand.
Yes, but I believe you unmuted slightly before. I've been trying to keep track. So if you would, you're welcome to comment as well. There's a hand raise function that some people who are really familiar with Zoom will use, but you're also welcome if you would like to put it in the comments section. So go on ahead. So I'm sorry, I guess we'll start with Susan and then the order that I just mentioned or something along those lines.
Can I talk now?
Yes,
Can you
Susan.
hear me? Okay. My name is Susan Maynard, and I teach with the North Carolina Virtual Public School. It's headquartered in Raleigh. I've been there for many a year. I teach AP European, AP World, and I've started with African American Studies. And I can't tell you how excited I was, like Ms. Deb just talked about, to see this course offered. I kind of ashamed to say it, but unless it was like chapter 3 or chapter 2, I did not know a lot about history. And I came along in school before many of you, I can tell. So my exposure to Africa is even more limited. But I am so excited to have something, I want something positive, to come out from this. We have this huge continent sitting there that kids simply don't know a thing about. And so again, ladies, I'm just excited. That's all I know how to tell you. I'm looking forward to this. And that's the end of my discussion.
Awesome, Susan. As I said, those are the best kinds. We love those. Those are the I think you said Miriam next, I think, if I heard correctly.
I think my background is a little bit sadder. I've lived in Africa my whole life. My family moved to Africa when I was 9, and I've pretty much lived there ever since. We're in the US now. We're just outside of Annapolis because of a funding glitch. My husband and I basically got grounded, and so we were relocated to the DC area. So my skill set is a little not easily transferable. So I got a job teaching social studies because I thought, well, I can teach, right? So I got certified as a social studies teacher, and going to school in Africa, I always went to American international schools, so like IB schools and such. But yet we were still taught history from a very American/European perspective because we use the American curriculum. So I've lived in Africa for 35 years and I don't know African history. I went to University of Cape Town, which has one of the most amazing libraries of African manuscripts, but I was in the School of Medicine. I still don't know African history. My children were born in Africa. And I still,
if there is a statement that says why this course, it's that statement right there, Miriam.
And I still don't. I mean, I know African history as it's taught from the colonialists or the slavery perspective, but the African history that I've learned is from going to museums in Nairobi, going to museums in Ethiopia, and scratching my knowledge as far as I can get it in my own individual research, because I want to know. It's pathetic that I don't know my own homeland's history. And I feel like I walk around in the memory of my mind and I have these big gaping holes, and it embarrasses the crap out of me.
It's so,
and I hate that. I'm a social studies teacher, and I can't even articulate the history of the land that I've chosen as home. It's just pathetic. I'm really embarrassed. And I feel like you guys, I can tell this to, but I kind of have to fake it with everybody else. Yeah, sure. I know the history of the Congo. Liar.
No, it's so common. What I've a common thread that I've noticed from participants in 3 sessions of this course is that, and it's also true of what I learned in K-12, is that the history of Africa was sort of limited to ancient Egypt and then suddenly transatlantic slave trade, but focused almost exclusively on the US as a recipient rather. So it was a very, very limited focus on medieval Africa. And that's for the most part what was put in textbooks. There aren't as many textbooks or very many textbooks on medieval Africa. There are few at the college level, less at the K-12 level, and we're hoping that this course helps fill in the gaps. Kara, I believe you were up next.
Thank you. Yeah, I am one of these kind of odd people in that I did my PhD in medieval art history, and I teach medieval art history today at a liberal arts college in Ohio. The PhD program I came through required a minor area of specialization as well that we had to take comprehensive exams for, and all in my minor area was African art. And so I do teach in those 2 areas. However, my classes, it's as if they are 2 distinct categories and never the 2 shall meet. And honestly, I can go through and I can recite dates and I can, point to medieval empires on map and all that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean that I can really eloquently blur the lines, okay, between what I teach in the European tradition and the African tradition. And that's really why what I kind of came into this seminar kind of wanting to do, had to think about ways to creatively and eloquently kind of bring in these 2 kind of histories and traditions together in ways that aren't so reliant on the kind of canon of art history or canon of European history that I was trained in. And that's something that I'm kind of like just needing some help with as I'm kind of bouncing ideas around in my head. Also, we have had so many fabulous online resources just placed out there in the ether, and there's some really great organizations, including the MAA, to help us kind of use those resources and introduce them to students and so forth. That being said, so much has come so fast the last 5 years or so that no matter how hard I try, I keep slipping behind. And so finding those kinds of resources is something too that I was hoping to be able to kind of bring out of this experience.
Kara, you bring up a really excellent point, which is that, so we have this other issue that Miriam so eloquently spoke to, which is it's a blank, right? But we also have this issue where if we do teach it or it is there, it is so separated that it's hard. I think it's hard for students to understand how this entire world is connected, right? There's not all the world is connected, and how do we bring those connections together? So Kara, I think that's awesome. I actually was writing something this week, and I'm trying very consciously when I give like examples from the Middle Ages, make sure that it is balanced. Make sure that the examples that I'm giving are not all from one place or another, but that it's a very balanced example. So I feel the need as well, especially working on some things this week. I think it was William next, wasn't it, Hannah?
Yep, and then I believe Catherine Jansen after William.
Sure. So I'm a kind of traditional medieval English historian, and I'm going to be teaching the world history sequence starting this coming fall. And I was thinking about the fact that, I know maybe a tiny bit about pre-Columbian Americas, and I know, Eurasia. But once you get south of the Mediterranean, it's Here There Be Dragons, right, on the map. And even just in the little bits that what I've been learning so far from this course, and also from some presentations that I saw at Kalamazoo, as it were, last week before, I'm realizing a couple things. First of all, as somebody else was just saying, how interconnected things are. Like the idea that the gold leaf that we see on a medieval manuscript that's produced in England may well have come from West Africa, because that's where all the gold was. I didn't know that. I had no idea. I knew the silk came from the other end of Eurasia, but I didn't know that the gold came from points south. But also, it started me thinking about a couple of other things, like Egypt is the one thing that everybody knows about Africa. And I'm thinking about a kind of Egyptian exceptionalism. Like, is that, when people talk about Egypt historically, I think my sense is that it often gets kind of lumped in as Egypt in the Middle East. And there are these questions about, yeah, but are they really African? Like, what do we mean by African? How African do you have to be? How much melanin do you have to be to count as African? Like, well, it's on Africa, right? But I wonder if, like, it's historically been hived off and from the rest of Africa as a way of kind of being able to ignore Africa and treat it as something other than Africa. So I'm gonna have to think about that. I'll be glad to hear anyone else's reflections on that too, because this is just ideas that are just bubbling up in my mind this week. And then also learning from some things I've just read recently about how osteoarchaeology, a study of bones from, I think it was both the Smithfield Plague Cemetery in London and the sailors on the Mary, who went down on the Mary Rose, that there are a not inconsiderable number of people with some African genetics. And so even just as a medieval English historian, I start thinking, oh, that's really interesting. How did they get there? What was the connection? And I'm looking forward to, even just as a traditional English medievalist, wondering, well, what did that have to do? But then also trying to think, well, think about it from an African's perspective. How would you wind up in like a distant backwater like England if you came from Africa? And try to think of it the other way around. So I'm really looking forward to this.
What a great term, Egyptian exceptionalism.
Yes, I do love that phrase. I mean, I think one of the things about Egypt too, that to play into this Egypt exceptionalism, the idea that Africans could create pyramids, right? Or that Africans could create the architecture and the other structures that Egyptians create is, I mean, I was just reading about Great Zimbabwe and its colonial history, where they dismissed it completely. It could not have been locals that created Great Zimbabwe, because clearly. So I mean, it's just one of those. It's it's so ridiculous, when you think about these things. So yeah, I'm with you, William. I think. Catherine, I know you were next, but did Helene and Miriam, did you want to respond to William?
I did. I was just wondering, this whole idea of referencing Egypt as kind of the de facto stand-in for Africa at large. Sometimes I wonder if it isn't because the whole Judeo-Christian background and context, because it's mentioned in the Bible, is therefore interesting. So nothing else is, but that one is. So let's go pay attention to that, and then we can ignore everybody else and pat ourselves on the back and carry on with our lives.
It's also really easy to whitewash at that point too, right? Whatever.
Yeah. And then Ethiopians like to raise their hand and say, "Don't forget about us." And then
it's also part of the discussion of everything south of the Sahara counts as Africa, but northern Africa somehow different, or that the Sahara as a barrier rather than a connective area. So that's something we dig into as well in some of the future modules, that the Sahara has been understood as this boundary, that some of these Mediterranean ideas and concepts somehow just didn't permeate into the Sahel, but they did. So that's something that we'll be addressing.
Lane, did you want to respond, or?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about Egyptian exceptionalism as well, and that term whitewashing that you just used, Keisha. The early church has so many saints and leaders who were African, and we can't know, right? There's no representation of them. There's no description of their skin tone, so we cannot know what they looked like. But they come down to us as just automatically default white. Saint Augustine, you know, I mean, the grand poobah of the church, right? Is African. And it's an open, I think it's an open question. So he's called a Berber, but the term Berber has the same problem of potential, you know, whitewashing, skin bleaching or something. And I don't know if maybe there is by now some kind of definitive answer to this. But what I find so insidious is that default, so that even if there's a potential for Blackness there, it's not read as such. And so there's an erasure that just happens. And it's throughout. I mean, if you think about the Catholic Church just in the US, you know, it's at a popular level. And then it's also at the instructional level, and like others in this class, you know, I went through all my years of schooling with barely a mention, and certainly not of anything, you know, medieval Africa, all the productivity. In my comment on links to Africa, I mentioned Timbuktu, and that was really exciting to me back in 8th grade, and then nothing, you know, dead silence. And so, yeah, yeah, whitewashing, exceptionalism, that North African thing. And so, yeah, I too want to dig into that more, even if there are no answers.
Well, welcome to the humanities, right? For any of you who are looking for a very stark way to talk to your students and show your students whitewashing, I recommend the Black Madonna at Chartres Cathedral in France. The Black Madonna, the whole Black Madonna tradition is amazing and fabulous, but there is a Black Madonna at Chartres, and in 2017 they cleaned it. And it is now the brightest, liliest white thing you have ever seen in your entire life. If you put the two next to each other, it's one of the starkest examples of literal whitewashing that I have ever seen. So I highly recommend it. I've used it in a lot of talks to demonstrate. I'm an amateur photographer, and I have an image from pre-2017, thank goodness. And then I show what happened after that. So just as something to, if you're interested to show whitewashing in action, that's definitely a very good example. Catherine, I am so sorry we've been making you wait.
No, it's an interesting discussion. And at least this, the part of the discussion about sort of the Egyptian exceptionalism, it reminds me of the debate and actually the furor that attended the publication of Martin Bernal's Black Athena about a generation ago. This was a book that was arguing completely against the grain, saying that the classical tradition, right, that lily white classical tradition was absolutely influenced, and not just influenced, but derives from, you know, an Afro-Asiatic roots. And there was such a controversy in the historical profession and among classicists about this book, because nobody wanted to hear that a generation ago. I think that these days maybe the book would get a little bit better reception, but still there's a lot of pushback against that. And I remember at the time when it came out, and I was teaching it, and there were questions that, you know, that certainly came out, and the question of who was it that just said, it was Helene that talked about St. Augustine, and that was one of the big questions, right? Was, you know, what are the roots of St. Augustine? But interestingly, not that I have an answer for that, because I don't, but I heard a fabulous talk by one of my colleagues a couple of years ago, who was a musicologist, in which he was exploring the music, and particularly the liturgical music that Augustine would have been familiar with, And he was absolutely convincing, saying that it drew from Berber traditions, from African traditions, and that Augustine was very firmly in those traditions. And yes, you know, he was Romanized, but he also was steeped in those African traditions. And in fact, he brought singers in to recreate what musicologists think the liturgical music would have sounded like in the time of Augustine, and singing against some traditional, you know, African music of the area. But in any event, it was very interesting. But what I wanted to say was that I feel like I teach sort of K through 13. So that is the course that I teach is very much to first year students, first year college students, and first semester students. So they're just learning how to be college students. And they're taking a course in a survey in the Middle Ages. And so I have been trying to be as global as possible of late, and have really spent my entire career trying to add in or weave in all the groups that I wasn't taught when I took a medieval survey when I was in college. That is, there were basically not even any women in the course when I took a medieval survey, right? Except for the odd Eleanor of Aquitaine and maybe Eloise, the exceptional women, couple of exceptional women. There were no peasants when I took the medieval survey. Islam did not enter into the picture except for a foe against whom the West was fighting in the Crusades, nothing about Islamic culture, civilization, religion, politics, nothing. So I certainly have been spending my years really revising my syllabus every year to think about being as broad as possible and to braid as much of the world in as possible. And for the last couple of years, I've been thinking about Africa, but do feel very unequipped to think about Africa because I haven't been trained in that area. And as someone was saying, there are a lot of resources that have come online very quickly, and it's hard to know how to sift. It's also like putting a course together on, you know, the United States of America, right? We've got 50 different states, all with different cultures, with different politics, with different everything. And so, you know, there's not a monolith there. So how do you really treat Africa fairly when there are all of these different Africas to talk about? And so I think that's really one of the challenges that I've had is you know, it's not a course on medieval Africa, but I certainly want to do as much justice to medieval Africa as I can. So that's why I'm here, to help me think through those issues.
If it helps anybody to think about this, I said I came to this, you know, as a you know, not after my graduate program. One of the ways that I've thought about this is the same way that I thought about, I was very overwhelmed at the beginning. It is a huge continent. There's a lot going on, right? But I started thinking about it the same way I approached my graduate studies on Europe. You know, you get into France, you get into Germany, you get into the different parts of France, you get into, and so, you know, working your way, I think if it helps to think about it, this course really does focus a lot on Western Africa in a lot of ways, because it's such a huge continent and we have 5 weeks to do it. Hannah and I have brainstormed some ways to do a companion course to this that gets into, you know, further into Zimbabwe and Ethiopia and further into other areas. But I think taking one piece at a time is really useful, and thinking about it the same way that we think about doing our studies in Europe. I mean, we think about Anglo-Normans, we think about, Middle English, we think about those in pieces, even though we know the whole, but we think about studying them in pieces, and the same is true for Africa, really, if it helps at all. So don't try to tackle all of Africa at the same time, I think is really kind of the key there. And I made that mistake for a while. Let's just do it all. Let's get it all. Let's do everything. But I think it's important to take those pieces at a time. Anybody who hasn't spoken, do we have anybody else who'd like to jump in here? I know there's been some chatting going on too, so makes perfect sense. Any questions about any technical things or the work coming up or anything along those lines?
Or questions about the final project, since the PDF went out, just to give an overview of what will be coming up?
Everybody seems good.
I guess I could ask a question. Sorry, I'm Amanda.
Yes.
Please do.
So if we have technical questions, do we ask Hannah and then
whoever you want to send an email to is perfectly fine. If you email both Hannah and myself, probably one of us will get back to you pretty quickly. So it's good to email both of us on everything, and then whoever gets to it first. Hannah does take care of more of the technical things, but there's a lot of those types of things I can handle as well if necessary too.
I have many logins and can try and figure things out from there.
If there are issues with the platform, logging in, passwords, access, any of those things, feel free to shoot me an email as well. We'll get you.
Okay.
And you can send them to me and I forward them to the right person. So really you'll get to the right person. Whoever you message, you will find it'll get to the right person.
Thank you.
We all respond to our emails fairly quickly. And especially if you send an email to the three of us, your chances of getting a response within 24 hours is pretty high. Unless it's like the middle of a holiday, but we don't have that many.
As I tell my students, contrary to popular belief, I do have a life on the weekends sometimes, and so sometimes I don't respond quite as quickly at that particular point.
I do have human moments when I'm not dissertating and course designing.
And now that I'm vaccinated, I feel like I'm that life may be a little more interesting for the next few months.
Yes.
Just a quick comment. I want to tell you all. Again, I thanked you at the beginning, but for education programs, online course development, when we were planning out our courses, this was the vision, to have this opportunity to come together, share ideas. It doesn't matter what level you're teaching at. Everyone brings a certain core set of skills to what we're doing, but this is happening virtually, synchronously tonight. But throughout this course, you'll see that community building, which has happened throughout the other sessions of this course. And so it's just something that really stands out. And I was sitting back tonight kind of watching it happen, but that's what this course is all about. And we're just getting started. And so just on behalf of my team, just thank you to Lisa and your vision and the work of the Medieval Academy as well. So again, please continue to share your ideas, because we debrief and we incorporate those ideas, and we'll build on those resources for future iterations of this course or additional courses that I'm sure we will be building. So that was just my little piece. So right now it's 7:56. We're right at the hour mark. And so please, Hannah.
Rhonda, I believe, has a comment, but also if you would like to give us feedback on the course, those beginning and end surveys are a great place to do that. We read those and we take your ideas seriously. You're also welcome to email us with comments, critiques. Praise is always nice, but not required. Rhonda.
This is just a pure curiosity question. How many people are registered for this course? Do you have a number?
42, I believe.
Okay, because I was keeping up with comments and I was being all friendly and positive and welcoming everybody at the beginning, and then it was like whoosh, That's fine.
Don't worry if you don't get to everybody's or read everything that happens. Hannah and I can probably aren't going to read absolutely everything either. There are 42 people in the course, and there will be people who will be doing things a little bit different times depending on grading schedules and all of that sort of thing. So don't feel bad if you don't get to absolutely everybody.
Yeah, but it's so encouraging that there were 42 people in the course. I mean,
We've
you know,
had, Mike, how many have we had for this course altogether?
142.
100, yeah, 142 and counting.
That is so outstanding. I mean, Kisha, remember when we first started talking about this? I would never have believed that we would have that many people who were interested and who wanted to be here and who are engaged in this topic. I just couldn't be more thrilled.
Yeah, nationally and internationally. We've had Australia, Uganda, the UK, Germany, who else?
Israel now.
Wow.
Israel.
And, you know, for so many people, and I hear this a lot on social media in particular, the course that you're going to teach them might be their only exposure to the Middle Ages. And that's one reason why this kind of expansion is so important, because they're going to go out into the world and be talking about the Middle Ages on social media and getting in fights with people. And it is so important that they go out into the world with a really, this kind of a rich and realistic vision of the medieval period. And I mean, you're really doing, it's so important. And it will really make a difference to this field and to the general public in the future. So thank you all thank you for being here, and your students are really lucky.
Rhonda, I saw your point in the comments about making a Google map of our locations. That's something we could consider adding potentially later. We'd have to integrate that into a later module somewhere. But just to circle back to your previous point about engaging with everyone in the comments, it will be very difficult to do that. If you have the time and energy, you are welcome to. My rule of thumb or a recommendation when I take a course like this is that I'll write my own post and then I'll comment on maybe 2 or 3 other people's if I have the time, just so that I'm engaging with others. But when there are 40 people in a class, it's hard to read everyone's comments. So do what you can. And then for those who are able or interested and have the time to read more, please go on ahead. And then Kisha and I will respond to as many people as we can per week. We might not get to everybody each week. We probably won't, but we'll sort of divide and conquer when it comes to responding to questions. And then we also will sort of, if we respond to someone one week, we might respond to different people the next, so that way we're engaging with all of the participants over time.
Looks like we have our youngest participant.
I see that. She seems very excited to be here.
We should get.
So we are at 8 o'clock. We are at 8 o'clock, and as Mike said, I don't want to overstay anybody's time. But is there anything else anyone wants to address?
I can stop the recording now, and then anyone who would like to stay on and ask questions is welcome to, perhaps.
Perfect.